Hello everybody and welcome to Calls. This is the 2022 RSM Data Dive show. Not a lot to get into for the intro, so hopefully we can get a lot of data covered. Follow me on social media. The links are in the description, as well as my email address. That way you can make sure you are added to the distribution list for the bonus content that I'm going to start producing tomorrow. And in fact, I will have a little bit of a preview to show what you're going to be gaining by subscribing to the channel, reaching out to me on social media, and wanting a part of the bonus content. So I'll be previewing that just a little bit. So make sure you check out the description. And then chat is open, as it always is. Would love the interaction. What are you looking for this week? If you made any bets, what kind of stats are you looking at to perhaps look into a data model? I have certainly built one for tonight. I actually feel pretty good about it, having spent literally all day in front of the computer researching some things. So looking forward to sharing that with you all. And then finally, all statistics are provided by FantasyNational.com. Amazing resource. I say it all the time. Just go check it out. If I can do it, you can do it. It's as simple as that. With that, let's dig into the data for the 2022 RSM. And as soon as my mouse cooperates, we're going to transition over here. And the tournament fact sheet came out earlier today. And we're not going to spend too long on it. It's the same yardage, same green size, bunkers, water hazards, literally everything. The one change on the sheet is now the oldest Bermuda greens. They're 22 years old, not 21. Literally the only change. So everything that we said last night is still true. Very, very fast Bermuda greens. They did take the stimp off. I did notice that. So I don't know if they're slowing it down, speeding it up. I don't know. But they did take the stimp meter off the Seaside course and the Plantation course. But all the specifics about the course, the average green size, the yardage, par, setup, everything else is exactly the same. So with that, I'm going to close out of that, and we are going to look into some stats in the Fantasy National world here. You can see I was actually playing around here a little bit earlier, just to sneak peek. I was looking at some windy factors. I'll try to remember to pull up Wind Finder at the end of the show for you all. There is some wind projected later in the week. So that certainly could alter some plans for DFS lineups, certainly. Maybe some outright bets. We'll want to see who plays well in the wind, potentially. So what I'm going to start with, we looked at the strokes gained total last night in the initial research show, but one thing that I didn't bring up was this right here, this tournament history tab. And earlier today, during my extensive amount of research, I went back all the way to 2017, so all 5 years that this is encompassing here. And I went ahead and split out a lot of statistics, sliced them this way and that way, and basically try to get to the bottom of where some of these finishes are coming from. For example, Kevin Kisner here at the top, he's got the most strokes gained total for the past 5 years, but it is basically all or nothing. He's got 3 top 10s, including a runner-up last year, and 2 missed cuts. So, Victor Hovland just came off the Mayakoba. He had missed the cut the first 2 years he had played it. Then he had won. Was something just special that week? Or did it take him a while to get used to the course? Well, clearly it was more of the latter, since he came back and defended his Mayakoba title. Because of that, I really wanted to dig in and see what some of these sources of volatile finishes are. And not only that, just being an analyst that I am, the past two DFS slates have been atrocious for me. So when things aren't going well, it's a time to reevaluate, rethink some of the processes that you do. So I was pretty heavy into that today as well, self-critiquing a lot of the methodology that I have. So with that, I'm showing you this here. In the past 5 years, the most strokes gained of players in the field. Kevin Kisner's number one, Webb Simpson, Zach Johnson, Henrik Norlander, and Charles Howell III. So Charles Howell won this event in 2019. Has also missed the cut, so he's got quite a bit of volatility in his results as well. No, not as volatile as Kisner per se. Webb Simpson's a little different. He's got two fairly middling tournaments, two very good finishes, and a withdrawal. Going back to 2018, I don't know what that reason was. Health, or he was just playing bad, I don't know. Zach Johnson has been fairly consistent at this tournament. Missed the cut way back in 2017. Henrik Norlander, also pretty consistent. So the top five there, you've got this kind of data set that's all over the place. You've got volatile finishes, you've got consistent, steady performers in Norlander and Webb, and Zach Johnson. Charles Howell's like Kisner, very volatile. So again, it was one of those things where I wanted to try to get as much data as I could. I could get my hands on and all that stuff. And honestly, I don't mean to jump around here, but I just noticed, Patrick Rogers here, who's maybe 15th to 20th, he's got some very, very volatile finishes here as well. 2 top 10s and 3 missed cuts. So is that something about the course? Is it something with the players that they have something in common? So that's why I was digging into a lot of that information. And tomorrow and Wednesday, those who are on the distribution list, I'll be sharing my findings from today and my thoughts on it. At the other end of the spectrum, the bottom 5 players that have played this tournament and just don't do well here: Sepp Straka, Brendan Steele, Peter Malnati, Joseph Bramlett, and Scott Stallings. I don't see too much in the way of similarities between these players. Sepp Straka is he's pretty long off the tee, so I wouldn't think this course would suit him anyway. But he plays it. He doesn't play it well. He's not coming in with very good form at all. So, it's hard to say. And I just closed out of that tab like an idiot. Like I said, Fantasy National. If I can work it, if I can use it, you absolutely can, because you're not as dumb as me. We're going back to the bottom 5 here. Brendan Steele is, I would say that these 4 are more similar than Sepp Straka. These 4 are shorter hitters, more known for their short game, and I don't think that's putting. I'm actually thinking around the green, chipping and such. Malnati, so Malnati's not necessarily the greatest of putting. I guess it's just going to resort it every time. Brendan Steele, kind of hit and miss. Although Brendan Steele's irons are usually pretty good, so it's surprising to see him struggle at this event. So that leads me to want to evaluate strokes gained approach at this course. So when I looked at it, and we looked at 2021 last night in the initial research, we saw some interesting stuff. The course breakdown said that putting was going to be the most important, followed by strokes gained approach. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4 in the top 22 that lost strokes on approach, and Scott Piercy barely lost. And putting, you've got the same amount, 4 players. 4.6 in putting here, 4.6 there. In regards to the negative, yes, you're losing more approach in these 3, 1, 7, 2, 3, than you are in, say, the 1 and .02, .03. But there's a lot of high strokes gained approach as well in here. And save for maybe a couple of guys, the putting is, I don't know, it's about the same. Of course, I'm biased towards strokes gained approach. I prefer iron play. Off the tee and around the green are not a big factor at this course. They just aren't. In fact, distance was the least common or least indicated metric that led to success. And that was part of the research that I did, that I teased in the intro. But off the tee and around the green, they don't come into play really here. And now, certainly, if somebody has a fantastic chipping performance, say like Scott Piercy, they're going to vault up the leaderboard. But it's not a mandatory skill to work your way around Sea Island Resort. Same thing with off the tee. Because this is a forced layup course, off the tee just kind of gets mitigated. Most guys are going to find the fairway more than they normally would, just due to the fact that they're hitting irons and hybrids off the tee as opposed to drivers. So what I wanted to do, let's take a look at a few years in previously. This is one of the years that it actually played difficult here, and I don't know why, because I guess the wind picked up, but the greens have always been fast. The course wasn't lengthened. The firmness, I think, has always been medium. So something happened last year that really toughened it up, because the winning score was -11, and normally it's about -20. In fact, in 2021, the cut was -5. So if you got cut last year, you would have been in the top 20 in 2020. So again, something happened that year. But let's take a look, and we'll see more so with 2020 that the putting outweighed the approach, especially at the very, very high end here. You've got an 8 and a 6, 5.5, another 6 and 6.5. So the high end putting certainly outweighed the approach in 2020, but it wasn't the fact that the approach was awful either. But again, around the green, you can see how around the green just doesn't really play a factor at all. All these negatives. Now, granted, they're not deep into the negative, but it's still negative. There's 6 of the top 20 that were losing strokes around the green. And more so in the severity, losing strokes off the tee and still finding themselves high on the leaderboard. So it's a lot of putting, a lot of approach. What we did see last night in the initial research show was par 4s. Par 4s were extremely important in 2021, and it's a common theme throughout all the way back to 2017, as far as back as I went in the research. I mean, even to tied for, let's just cut it off here at 22. All of these guys are positive in the strokes gained par 4, and some of them are astronomically positive. What's the lowest here? 1.3? So that's a pretty decent amount of strokes gained on a par 4 for the tournament. And all of them are inside the top 22. So that's a very, very strong correlation. We saw last night that if there was a range, it was the 400 to 450, which 9 of the 13 par 4, 9 of the 12, par 4s fall in this range here. So the only one that didn't play them well was Pat Perez. I was thinking of last night. The only one that didn't play them well in 2020 was Alex Noren. But you see here, Sebastian Munoz gained 10 strokes just from this range alone. Will Gordon, 7. Scott Brown, 6. Harmon, 4. This is a very key range, as well as the just regular par 4s. We saw that par 3s were a little bit as well. So in 2020, you certainly had some high finishes, but it was not the same strong indicator that it was in 2021. I don't want to hammer on this point too much, but let's look at 2019, just one more year. Again, for whatever reason, 2020 had a round that was difficult. Three-fourths here were easy. Even in windy conditions, it just got to average. So this course is not difficult by any means. It's still short, still fast. Hitting the fairways is easy because guys are clubbing down. Again, we'll look at the strokes gained. Approach, pretty solid up the top, but you are finding that more guys are losing strokes on approach. The putting is coming through here. Really, the only bad putter that had a good performance, a good overall performance in the tournament was Austin Cook in 2019. But other than that, I mean, you've got some high 8, 9 strokes there, 5.5, 5, 5.5, 5.5. So the more I look into it, just being objective, I think it's fair to say that the putting is going to be more important than the approach. Numbers don't lie. We'll look at the par 4s. You can see how important this is all the way down here. This is the last line you see here. I mean, it's still going. You've seen a 1 negative in the top 37, top 40. 1 negative player in the par 4s. Very, very important here at Sea Island. And the range still, a lot of high finishes here. I think Zach Johnson probably led this year, but you got a couple of middling performances, but look at 7th, 3rd, 2 more 15s, 2 top 5s, top 25, top 15. This range is very, very important, as well as just strokes gained par 4. So we'll leave this up. I'm going to go back to the strokes gained and go to 2021 just in case we want to come back to this. But let's really kind of start honing in on some players that we want to either focus on or we notice that pops on several of these other indicators. So first thing, let's look at strokes gained total on easy courses. This is 36. So let's limit it to the last 24. We're going to cut off 3 rounds from a couple of guys, but strokes gained total on easy courses in the past 6 months: Cam Smith, Seamus Power, Andrew Landry, Johnny Vegas, and Taylor Gooch. So interesting names there. Andrew Landry. This guy is so Jekyll and Hyde for me. I don't know what to do with him. He pops at Mayakoba and then comes back and misses the cut at Houston. So this is the best example I can give of Andrew Landry. From the start of the new tour season, missed the cut, top 5. Missed the cut, top 10. Missed the cut. Well, the pattern suggests he's probably going to top 15 or so, but I can give you no reason why he would. Andrew Landry's just not in good form, and yet he'll top 10 of the Mayakoba, the Sanderson Farms, he top 5s, and then last year he top 5'd this exact same tournament. He did it without the putting as well, and putting is the most important part of this tournament. So his irons were very, very good. Off the tee was good. So it's surprising to see that he finished so high without a great putting performance when the course almost demands a great putting performance. So that is something to keep an eye on as we move forward tonight. How many times does Andrew Landry pop? And on more than just easy filters. Danny Lee has not been playing great, but he is coming off two fantastic performances. He, tied for second in basically the hurricane that was the Bermuda Championship, and also top 10 down in Mayakoba. But he's coming back stateside. I don't know how that game is going to translate. Now, certainly the Bermuda Greens are the same from the Bermuda. Mayakoba's past Palom. But, just completely different circumstances. You had 30-mile-an-hour winds at the Bermuda. It was rainy, cold. It is supposed to be chilly by Georgia's standards this week, but nothing to the effect that it was in Bermuda. And there's no rain in the forecast. It's just chillier and a bit windier. So, I don't know how Danny Lee's game is going to translate this week. Which is to say, I don't think it's going to translate this week. And now you should probably bet him and use him in every single DFS lineup. So there's a good indicator for easy courses. I always like to check approach just because some guys can really perform on easy courses and some don't. Or not necessarily need, but they just play better when it gets difficult. I'm thinking of Patrick Reed, generally Shane Lowry. These guys play well the harder the conditions get. But in strokes gained approach, Russell Henley rises to the top, which will be a common theme tonight as we look at approach numbers. But we still have some overlap here. And again, we're looking at strokes gained approach still on easy courses. Russell Henley, Taylor Gooch, Mito Pereira, Henrik Norlander, and Johnny Vegas are your top 5 are on easy courses, followed by Adam Scott, Luke List, Ches Reavie, Cameron Smith, and Kurt Kitayama. So a little bit of overlap there, certainly. Again, I just like to look at approach, but really you should just look at strokes gained total. So let's remove the easy filter. Let's look at par 70s. In fact, I'm going to combine two things. Let's look at short par 70s. And the reason I'm combining these two is that part of the research I did today was trying to find very, very strong comparison courses, and I found two. I mentioned one last night in Waialae for the Sony Open. I'm going to expand this to the last 12 months here just to get us some more data here. I found one last night, or I had mentioned one. That was Waialae. I found a second today, and it might be a little surprising. It's Sedgefield, the Wyndham Championship, but they are fast Bermuda greens. It is a short course. It's an easy course. The only difference is it's not on the coast like Waialae is. That's why Waialae was such a great comp. It's a coastal course. It's short. Generally plays easy, yada yada. But Sedgefield matched up quite a bit as well with Sea Island. So I'm going to, like I said, I combined this short par 70s. Let's see who plays those the best. No surprise, or at least maybe indicative of why he is the leader in the strokes gained total for this tournament. Kevin Kisner's number 1. Russell Henley 2. Interesting, Brendan Steele is 3rd. Yet, when we looked at the tournament history, he has historically struggled at this event. So, again, is this a Victor Hovland situation where he's, just had 2 bad tournaments and he'll figure it out? I'm not saying he's going to win, but he figures it out. because by this lone metric, again, there's a lot that we can dig into tonight, but by this lone metric, this says you should be pretty good at this course. Short par 70s. So anyway, rounding out the top 5 of best players by strokes gained total on short par 70s. Kisner, Henley, Brendan Steele, Webb Simpson, no surprise. Adam Scott, probably no surprise. Harris English is 6th, Neiman 7th, Matt Jones, Camilo Villegas, and Bryce Garnett. So Zach Johnson here, it just kind of catches my eye. He's lurking just outside the top 10. Alex Noren's lurking just outside the top 10. We have a little bit of overlap here. Webb Simpson, Henley for his iron play. Adam Scott, I think, has popped once or twice. So we're starting to get a few names here. But really, I mean, look at the putting. I mean, really, the worst putter of the 15 guys I've named or so is Brendan Steele, which that might explain some of his woes at this tournament. Maybe he just hasn't putt well on these greens, and on a course that mandates putting. You know, he's not terrible at it, but if he's the worst of the guys that we're mentioning, that could lead to it. Adam Scott, also not the best, but you know, in terms of relative to the field, these guys are pretty good. They're just not elite like Bryce Garnett, like Camilo Villegas, Kevin Kisner, even Russell Henley, which is surprising to me because every time I see Russell Henley putt a 6-footer, it doesn't even come close to the hole. But numbers don't lie, I guess. So, there's a good look at the short and par 70 short courses. Last thing I want to do before we really dig in, this is kind of a high-level overview. Let's look at windy, because again, it's supposed to be pretty darn windy this week. 13 rounds. Yeah, I'll keep it. It's all right. Best players in the wind the last calendar year. Robert Schrab, Johnny Vegas, Bryce Garnett, Camilo Villegas, Adam Scott, Louis Oosthuizen, Harris English, Brandon Wu, Keegan Bradley, and Russell Henley. Now, there is a lot of overlap there. Now, Robert Schrab's the number 1 player. We haven't seen him yet. But in the wind, let me tell you, Robert Schrab has been fantastic. Going back to the first round at the RSM last year, in conditions that are classified on Fantasy National by or as windy AF, he's lost strokes 1 time in those 10 rounds, just once. He is a very, very strong player in the wind, and you can see these aren't low numbers. He's got a couple that are below 1, but 4.5. 5. This is in a round, not a tournament. This is in a round. Gains 5 in 1 round. Gains 4.5 or 4.3 in 1 round. 4 in another round. 3, 3.5. Robert Schrab plays very, very well in the wind. So that's something to keep an eye on as the week moves along. If the wind, as of Monday night, the wind, weather's fickle anyway. But if the wind is, maintains its current forecast, Robert Schrab is somebody to look at. But Johnny Vegas has popped a few times. Bryce Garnett, Camilo Villegas, Harris English, Henley, Adam Scott's popped a little bit as well now. So starting to get a lot of players here that are lining up to the course specifics. Short, Bermuda, windy, par 70. I'm actually going to take another look here and see where Adam Scott is in relation to strokes gained total here at this tournament at the RSM. Adam Scott, I don't see him immediately, so let's search for Adam Scott. He's never played this event. Interesting. All right, so by again, just a high-level overview of these strokes gained total metrics. Seems like this should be a pretty good tournament for him, or at least a pretty good layout. And we come in, and if we check on Adam Scott, there he is. He's in really good form, to be honest. I've never been a big Adam Scott, not necessarily fan, but from an analytics perspective, I'm not someone who's going to go and chase Adam Scott or look for an excuse to use him. But other than the Houston last week, in which his irons were really, really bad, really bad, he's actually been very good with his irons. The week before, he gained just as much as he had lost at Houston. The Shriners, he gained even more. Northern Trust, he was still positive. 7 at the Wyndham, which, by the way, is a straight comparison course. That's Sedgefield. The Sony, this past year, he did make the cut, a middling finish. Off the tee was actually his strong suit. His irons kind of let him down that week. But you see where he's played these comp courses very well. His irons are in form. His putting is starting to cool off a little bit, but still strong. Off the tee, I don't think is going to matter this week, but he hasn't been bad with it. So Adam Scott could be somebody to look for. It is a little troubling to see that Bermuda is his worst surface, but he plays well whether it's easy or difficult. He plays well whether it's calm or windy. So Adam Scott's somebody to take a look at this week. Now that he's been popping on quite a few models, or at least some of these high-level metrics, certainly interesting. Let's take a look at, this one is hard to do. I always like to go birdies are better on easy courses. So this is actually one of the, I'm making sure I don't have any filters still. This is actually one of the metrics I have in the mixed condition model later. So I don't want to hammer it too much. But let's look at birdies are better, let's say on just short courses. Let's see what that yields. And we got 24 rounds, sure. Danny Lee is number 1, which speaks to the Mayakoba, the Bermuda, doing well on that. Cameron Smith, Webb Simpson, Davis Riley. Interesting. Russell Knox, Brandon Grace, Andrew Landry. There's Landry again. So not only has he popped on an easy filter, he has now popped on an easy and a short filter. Joaquin Neiman, Alex Smalley, and Adam Scott. There's Adam Scott again. Brandon Grace is somebody I targeted heavily last week. Him and Shane Lowry really let me down in DFS. Grace a lot. I really used Grace. To be fair, I used him way too much. I got enamored with the lack of ownership, and apparently people knew better than I did. So that's what helped my atrocious DFS weekend. But again, Grace playing, he pops on this birdies are better on short courses. Now, he's not traditionally been a great putter, over his career, but his putter is in decent form lately. He does play better when it's difficult. That was one of the reasons why I really liked him last week at Memorial Park, because it is difficult. But he's not bad when it's easy. He's also best when it's calm. So I don't know, maybe this is the inverse. Since he was so good when it was supposed to be difficult, he was bad. Maybe he's supposed to be bad this week and he's great. I don't know if that's a narrative I'm going to buy, but we'll see. To be fair, though, his putting has been pretty... Minus this, it hasn't been terrible, but you got to look here. Wyndham, which is obviously, we mentioned with Adam Scott, it's a comparison course. His irons were great, but You don't expect to gain 8.7 every time you're on fast Bermuda greens. So that's a bit of an outlier there. So if you take that away, this right here is going to weigh that down. Yeah, I don't know. I can still see using some brain and grace, but certainly tempered the excitement on that. So there's the birdies are better again. I don't want to hammer it too much because I've got it in the mixed condition model on the easy to par filter. But I always like looking at different stats with different filters to see if there's some overlap and such. Let's look at fairways and greens. And I've mentioned that distance does not matter here. Fairways don't really matter either because guys are clubbing down, so most guys are going to find the fairway anyway. Good drives, that's kind of the same deal because a good drive is classified as finding the fairway, which most guys are going to do, or hitting the green in regulation if they don't hit the fairway. So that I do like that stat a lot to use sometimes, but here, because we have strokes gained approach and the driving, the fairways and the distance don't matter, it mitigates this a little bit. What I have found, or what I did find today, was that greens and regulation played a very big part in a lot of the high success. So I'm going to go to our previous leaderboards or previous year leaderboards. We'll look at greens and regulation here. Pretty strong. Patton Kazire didn't hit a green basically. It made up for it in different ways. Sabatini wasn't great, but there's a lot of high, numbers here in the greens. 10th, 4th, couple of middlings, top 10, top 25, winner. So it's not the, end all be all stat, but there are a lot of high finishes here with a lot of positive greens in regulation. And this can be a bit misleading because these greens are so big, but it's still important to see, because if you're trying to scramble your way for par around this course, you're losing a lot of strokes. So you at least need to find the green in regulation to give yourself a chance at making these putts. But whereas last week, chipping and scrambling and around the green play was so big because the course was difficult, so who could save their pars was going to rise up their leaderboard. It's the opposite here. You just have to hit your greens. You have to make some putts to succeed here at Sea Island. So, and again, we'll take it one more year. Let's look at 2020 just to kind of belabor this point, how much the greens kind of matter. There's Norlander, Jim Furyk down here, which I don't think you can see. There you go. Jim Furyk. So if we search here, top 25, top 5, mediocre, winner 15-15, top 5, top 10, top 10, yeah. So greens were a pretty good indicator for the research I did earlier today. So let's look at greens. Let's look at greens on easy courses. See who has that. 27. Nah, that's fine. Scotty Scheffler, Luke List, Hayden Buckley has now popped a couple of times. Mito, Pereira, Johnny Vegas, starting to pop a lot. Denny McCarthy, Taylor Gooch, Joel Damon, Russell Henley, and Hudson Swafford are the top 10 greens in regulation on easy courses. Probably no surprise with Russell Henley. Greens in regulation mean iron play, and Russell Henley's the number one strokes gained approach player in this field, so that makes sense. Seeing Denny McCarthy up here is really surprising because his irons are usually really bad. Usually very, very bad, and he makes up for it because he can putt very well. This, bears it out here. Although his irons have been getting a little better, He top 15 to Houston, was basically field average. He was doing Denny McCarthy things, chipping and putting very well. The Shriners, he missed the cut, gaining in strokes gained approach. He had one very rare bad week on the greens. Of course, we don't have any of the metrics beyond strokes gained total for international courses, but it looks like he played those pretty well. I imagine most of it was in the putting, but we don't know. So his irons are steadily improving. I mean, he's got a really bad one here at the 3M, but they're steadily coming to field neutral, field average. As long as he continues to, which is surprising here because he's actually losing, his prowess or his big strength of putting. So if the irons continue to gradually get better, maybe I won't even say, get to good. Let's just call it field average. If he can get to 0 and the putting comes back to somewhat form, we'll say 1 stroke, Denny McCarthy will be very dangerous. Until he puts it all together, he's kind of in the Ricky Fowler camp for me, until he shows me that he puts it all together, which he was close at Houston. Close. Maybe Denny McCarthy is somebody to kind of take a look at this week. And again, for DFS, we'll really hammer in on who the values and such are, but this is more of a sports book thing and kind of making some mental notes for Wednesday, and once you want to see on this at the sports book that you prefer. So there's the top 10 in greens on easy courses. Let's take a look at greens in windy conditions. That's going to be interesting. I kind of want to see that. So when things get either hectic or unpredictable, when it gets real gusty, and so you can still hit their irons on target. No surprise, the top 3 or 4 here. So top 10 in greens in regulation in windy conditions. Corey Connors, Louis Oosthuizen, Webb Simpson, Kramer Hickok, Emiliano Grillo are your top 5. Bryce Garnett, Scott Piercy, Robert Schrab. We mentioned how great he is in the wind. He's 8th. Harris English 9th, and Vegas 10th. So English starting to pop. Vegas has popped on almost all of these metrics that we're looking at. We've got some Webb. This is the first time we've seen Corey Connors. Let's see how he's like in the wind. It's not his preferred, but he's not bad. He'll never be a great putter, but Bermuda is his best for what it's worth. In decent form. He hasn't missed a cut since the U.S. Open in June. Okay. This was the Shriners was a very un-Connors-esque like performance. You expect to see these numbers reversed. Kind of like here at the Wells Fargo. He gains 6 with the irons and loses 4.5 on the green. This is kind of the inverse. He loses 7 with the irons and gains 5.5 on the green. Loses 7 with the irons. Maybe I said green. I can't remember. Let's see. He did not play the Wyndham. He did play the RSM last year. Top 10. Interesting. Very good to know. He did not play the Sony. So he doesn't have a lot of experience at the comparison courses. But he does have some success here at Sea Island. So interesting note there. The first time we've seen Corey Connors pop. So yeah, what I found is that the greens were pretty important going through previous year's data. Let's get to the good stuff here. Proximity, spoiler alert, I guess is the word I'm looking for. It doesn't come into play a lot here or in the comparison courses. So let's look at par 3s. Par 3s. Strokes gained par 3. The top 10 with no filters, just Let me make sure I got no filters. Yeah. Strokes gained par 3, no filters, just straight up. Mackenzie Hughes, Alex Noren, Harris English, Lonto Griffin, Scotty Scheffler, Patrick Rogers, Louis, Zach Johnson, Joel Damon, and Stefan Jaeger. A little bit of overlap here. You see English again, Noren, Louis, ZJ. Let's look at some par 3. I guess windy again, just because par 3s are generally where you've got your irons and wedges, and you really have to control your flight. So the top par 3 performers in the wind: Zach Johnson, Peter Malnati, Adam Scott, Russell Knox, Joaquin Neiman. So a lot of overlap here. You got Zach Johnson, Adam Scott, Neiman's now popping a couple times with the wind. The rest of the top 10 are Lonto Griffin, Robert Schrab, Keegan Bradley, Sebastian Munoz, and Troy Merritt. So again, a little bit of overlap, but a lot of the same guys that are popping on the win metric for the par 3s. The best though is in the par 4s. So let me bring up the par 4s. We'll really look into this quite a bit. Let's take off the wind. Par 4s in the last 6 months, no filters, just straight up par 4s. Seamus Power, Louis Oosthuizen, Cameron Smith, Ches Reavie, Webb Simpson, Mackenzie Hughes, Mito Pereira, Russell Henley, Troy Merritt, Adam Scott, Hank Lebioda, and Brian Stewart. Those are 12 names. The ones there at the bottom are tied for technically 9th. So Seamus Power has always been playing these par 4s well. Having said that, he's got 2 back-to-back performances where they were just bad. I mean, the Mayakoba wasn't awful, but certainly was not to the level I was expecting. Because I had a win bet here and I had a win bet on him here. The irons have not been great, or they weren't great at Houston. They were fantastic at the Shriners. He just didn't make a putt, and honestly, his best strength, or his biggest strength, is off the tee. It was just middling there. So Seamus Power has been playing a little bit of whack-a-mole here recently. He had great form leading to his win at the Barbasol. Played okay at the Wyndham. Played fairly well at the Northern Trust. And then to start the new year, missed the cut. Sanderson Farms, 3 top 20s, 21st, and then 2 top 20s. Missed the cut at Houston. So he's kind of a little erratic right now. But he is always, anytime you're going to focus on par 4, Seamus Power is going to be very high on the rankings leaderboard. Henley, Mito, Webb Simpson. So not a lot of surprise here, to be honest. These are guys you would think about par 4s. Let's take a look at short par 4s, or at least short course par 4s. Generally, they're short. Let's see how much overlap we have here. Short course par 4s in the last 6 months: Cameron Smith, Sebastian Munoz, Davis Riley, Troy Merritt, Alex Smalley, Seamus Power, Cam Davis, Graham McDowell, Matt Wallace, and Brandon Grace. So now we've seen Davis Riley and Alex Smalley pop at the same time. I think it's on these short courses. Could be wrong. I'd have to double check in the strokes gained total when we were going through that. But now we're seeing some more here. Power's always going to pop on a par 4. First time we've seen Cam Davis. First time we've seen Graham McDowell. And the first time we've seen Matt Wallace. Maybe the first time we've seen Sebastian Munoz too. Interesting. Let's take a look at easy par 4s. Since this course is easy, pretty darn easy. Strokes gained par 4 on easy courses: Seamus Power, Andrew Landry, who is popping on a lot of the easy metrics, Cam Smith, Ches Reavie, Chris Kirk now rises quite a bit, Troy Merritt, Nick Hardy, Webb Simpson, Matt Kuchar, and Johnny Vegas. All right. I think the last thing I want to look at in a kind of high level, well, I can't call it high level, but without going into the mixed condition model, This is the range of par fours that I have seen really play out the best here at Sea Island and at YLI, which is the Sony, and at Sedgefield, which is the Wyndham. 400 to 450, and remember, 9 of the 12 par fours at Sea Island are in this range, or in this length. So let me make sure I don't have any filters here. I don't. Straight up, who's the best par 4 from 400 to 450? Tyler Duncan. The first time we have seen him, and he's number 1. It's Tyler Duncan, Adam Scott, Seamus Power, Scott Stallings, and Roger Sloan are your top 5. Sung Kang, Alex Norn, Brant Snedeker, Troy Merritt, and Mito Pereira. Very interesting. Very interesting. Let's look at this length of par 4 on easy. A lot of the same names: Adam Scott, Seamus Power, Johnny Vegas, Merritt, Stallings, Duncan, Scott Gutschewski, who we kind of highlighted last night in the initial research, Roger Sloan, Doc Redman, and Tom Hoagie. Let's look at easy and short. Let's put those two together. Easy and short par 4s of 400 to 450. Vegas, Gligic, Spawn, Novak, Doc Redman, Richie Wierenski, Rory Sabatini, Peter Uihlein, Ben Colas, and Charles Howell. Well, there you go. There's a different list for you. Vegas is still up there. But a lot of these other guys, this is the first time we've said their name. Oh, my. Adam Scott is lurking here in 12th. But, yeah, there's a lot of newer names here. Again, that's pretty filtered down, short and easy. But it's always good to take a look. All right. So let's bring up the mixed condition model that I had made or have made today, and I feel pretty good about it, especially considering the amount of research I did leading into it. So just to kind of walk you through it here fairly quickly, I put 10% strokes gain total on easy courses, 10% strokes gain total on short courses. Those two I can guarantee you about this course. It's short and it's easy. I did put 5% in windy. Thursday is supposed to be very, very calm, and then the winds pick up. And I'll show you the wind. Actually, you know what? While we're talking about it, so I don't forget, let's bring up the wind finder. So this wind tower, I guess, I don't know exactly what they use, is essentially right next to the golf course. And you'll see here Thursday, calm, fantastic weather, high of 75, no rain in the during the week at all. Just a beautiful day for golf. Friday, however, it starts to pick up, get really windy. It cools down to a high of 66, and then all of Saturday is windy, and then it seems to taper off on Sunday. So again, as of right now, there's no rain in the forecast. It's just windy on Friday and Saturday. Normally, we don't really worry about wind on Saturday, but we're doing it only a little bit because it looks like it's picking up Friday afternoon. So if this were Wednesday night and this forecast didn't change a bit, I would give it a pretty heavy favor of the Thursday PM, Friday AM, only because Thursday is great conditions for everybody. Friday morning is clearly better than Friday afternoon. That's why I would give it a pretty significant advantage for Thursday PM, Friday AM. It's mainly on this Friday that I'm looking at strokes gained total windy. So if we're obviously trying to get 6 of 6 through on these DFS lineups, or somebody who plays well in the wind that might be undervalued by the sports books, if we can get them through the cut, they're going to play well on Saturday again if they're good wind players, because it's supposed to be windy all day. And then Sunday's, just kind of a free-for-all, just like it always is. But it's interesting, I just noticed as well. So Thursday, the wind direction is, we'll say south to north. I really don't know if that's the case, but just using cardinal directions here. in a south to north kind of fashion, and then look as the wind kind of comes in. It goes, it completely changes direction north to south. So remember, some guys are going to be on seaside course, and then we'll have to come to the plantation and vice versa. So it'll be interesting to see how that works. We'll get a good idea when the tee times come out, how that's going to do, and what we might want to try to focus on if this forecast continues the way it is. So anyway, that's why I'm bringing a little bit of wind factor into this. Stroke gain approach. I always use stroke gain approach. I've only got it at 10%, and I'll explain why here in a bit. We saw how important putting was, or is here at Sea Island, 15%. Birdies are better on easy courses, 10%. Greens, 10%. Par fours. When I did the research today, par fours were clearly, and I mean this wasn't close, clearly the most indicative for high performance between this course and the two comparison courses. Should I put 20% in it? No. Or I don't know. I don't want to put 20% in it, is how I should say it. But, again, numbers don't lie. So I've got 20% in it right now, and then another 10% on the length of the par fours that are prevalent here and, are a good indicator as well. If I had to adjust this, I might go 15% here, add 5% to the approach, because that's my bias. There's also nothing wrong with putting 5% more in the putting, because we've seen how much that's important here. If the wind does indeed seem to stay in the forecast, you could argue that you want to put 5% here, or 5 more percent, I should say, here in the windy. This is what I have right now. And when I sorted, here's my rankings for now. And I don't honestly see this changing much. I know I said that last week, but I feel pretty confident in this data model. And I sometimes do, I sometimes don't. I feel really good about it. Since this is now my full-time gig, since it started this weekend, I was able to devote all my attention to this. So I feel really good about this data model. So my rankings, Cameron Smith is number 1, Seamus Power is number 2, Webb 3, Corey Connors is 4th, Louise 5. To round out the top 10, it's Adam Scott, Harris English, Johnny Vegas, Alex Smalley, and Russell Henley. So a lot of these names we've seen pop quite a bit on all of the metrics that we kind of took a high-level overview of. Let's look at Alex Smalley, because he's the one that popped a couple of times with Davis Riley. Let's see if we can figure out what's going on with Alex Smalley. He is a Korn Ferry Tour graduate. He's not played on Power Bermuda. He has been good on his short time or short measured rounds on Bermuda. He has not played in windy AF conditions. He has played in moderate. He did okay. He's been consistent, whether it's been easy or difficult. We look at his measured rounds, because he has a few Korn Ferry Tour rounds that we just don't have. But we look at his measured rounds on the PGA Tour. His irons are good. Round the green game is okay. Again, I don't know how much. I don't think it's going to come into play much. Same with off the tee, but it's been positive. Putting is getting better. So, again, what you like to see here, Wyndham. This was as a comp course. He has a spike performance on the green. Houston Open, Bermuda Greens, spike performance on the greens. So Sanderson Farms is Bermuda as well. Didn't putt well that week. It happens. So what I'm getting at is he has these spike performances with the putting. If he has one of those, and given all this other All these other metrics, kind of stay true, stay normalized. I like Alex Smalley this week. I really do. Let's take a look at some Korn Ferry stuff really quickly, because that'll help us really see what's going on with these Korn Ferry guys. Since we're on the tab, let's go strokes gained par 4 for Korn Ferry. No filters? Yeah, no filters. Just straight up strokes gained par 4. Adam Vincent, Taylor Moore, Stephan Jaeger, Hayden Buckley, Callum Tarrant. So Mito is tied for 5th. Davis Riley is 11th. Where is Alex Smalley? Smalley is on the Korn Ferry Tour, 43rd. That's interesting, since that's 20% of the data model on the PGA Tour. So maybe this is just a run of good form on par 4s on the PGA Tour. Let's look at the length of par 4s. Svensson, Jaeger, Creel, Tarrant, Sig, Moore, Buckley again. Mito is 10th. Davis Riley, 17th. Again, we got to scroll for Smalley. There's Nick Hardy. He's been playing fairly well. Alex Smalley, dead last in the length of par 4s on the Korn Ferry Tour. 52nd. So, well, there you go. I like Alex Smalley. There's all the reason you need to fade him. So let's look at strokes gained total real quickly here. Alex Smalley was 20th. Riley 20th, tied for 20th. So in the last 6 months of the Korn Ferry Tour, Taylor Moore, Chad Ramey, Jaeger, Svensson, Mito were the top 5 on strokes gained total on the Korn Ferry Tour. Again, I don't want to go too much into it. Just when you see a Korn Ferry Tour guy so high in your rankings, it's always good to kind of take a look into it. But we saw where his par 4s weren't great on the Korn Ferry Tour. He's 13th here. The length of the par 4s, he was dead last. He's 27th here. Do we have bad data? Is this small sample size? Don't know. But based on this, I like Alex Smalley a lot this week. So there you go. There's a look at my rankings. Again, might change a little bit, but I feel really good about this data model that I've built today. The last thing I want to show you all is a sneak peek of the bonus content, bonus material you'd receive if you are a subscriber or reach out to me on social media, and the email address in the description. This is the kind of stuff that you'll get. Let me bring it up here and change the view to Excel. So again, this is just a little bit of what I was doing today. The 3 comparison, this course, the 2 comparisons, what some of the metrics were saying, how important they were ranked. So on all 3 of them, like I mentioned, strokes gained par 4 was the biggest indicator of success. Driving distance has always been at the bottom. Around the green, kind of middling. There's the length of the par 4s at the different courses. So this is the kind of stuff that you would be able to have access to, full bore, if you sign up for that newsletter, reach out to me on the in the email, and subscribe to the channel and all that stuff. So I'm going to actually bring it back here, let the camera hopefully get focused in. There we go. That's going to do it tonight for the RSM Data Dive show. Again, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you for the DFS Tactics show on Wednesday. There's going to be a lot of good stuff there. So until then, again, I hope to hear from you, social media, email. You don't want to miss a lot of that content. I enjoy digging into the weeds of the data and providing that for you all, so you all can use that for success, to build the right lineups, to make the right sportsbook bets, and so on. So with that, that's the conclusion of the Data Dive show. For any bets that you've made this week at the RSM, for any bets that you're thinking about making at the RSM, and until I see you Wednesday night, may all your bets be profitable.